Warning, this is a fanfiction, so this is definitely not what would actually happen, but it's my headcanon, and you clicked on the video, so you have to deal with it. This is also written by me, so any lore questions can be asked and I will try to give you an answer. Also, this isn't on the fanfiction website, so yeah. So with that, let season 2 begin. After this, Deku is able to go to the UA festival along with his other members of his class, even being allowed to show off his many gadgets. Making new ones including spring boots which go well with grappling hooks. The shoes can be activated and deactivated at any time. Kinetic gauntlets, allowing him to convert kinetic energy into real energy, allowing him to send electric-like blast to people. This goes really well with the grappling hooks, even embedding the hooks into the gloves. Deku also made earpieces that allow him to either enhance or disenhance his hearing. And finally some killer sunglasses because he wanted to look cool. So with that, the sports festival began. Bakugo didn't really recognize Deku due to his shades, luckily for him. With that, the festival officially began, with the race, Deku using his hooks to be able to go above the ground, and people allowing him to get an early lead. He also uses the hooks to hook himself onto Bakugo. Bakugo gets pissed at him, and shakes off Deku. Luckily for Deku, the ice stopped there. He could start using his spring shoes, activating them to give him a huge speed boost. Aizawa notes the hooks are very similar to the vigilante. Deku uses his hooks to grapple above the robots and shoes to get a massive speed boost, being around slightly behind Todoroki, and with Deku's speed being enhanced from all his training, he is able to pass him, putting him into first. 1A is surprised and wonders who this is, and Bakugo finally recognizes Deku, and gets extremely pissed. Despite that, he can't keep up to Deku as Deku constantly grapples onto the nearby walls and uses his boots to keep his speed up. Like Class 1A, Deku knows not to hesitate as he also fought villains when he was a vigilante. Deku then comes across the pit, and Deku can literally grapple right across the ravine, where Hatsune copies Deku's design, only for legs instead. Todoroki begins to catch up to Deku due to him activating his ice quirk again, nullifying his bounce shoes. Eventually Deku comes across the minefield, and again grapples right across the minefield, allowing him to make it to the gate, giving him first place. Which for someone who isn't in Class 1A is never heard of. Bakugo is of course extremely pissed, and Todoroki is more intrigued than anything else. Deku then learns the next event is the cavalry battle, and learns how many points he has, and realizes he is screwed. He only knows Hatsune, and he needs 2 more members, where Shinso walks up to him and asks to join as he wants to destroy Class 1A, and the Monoma walks up seconding that. Midoriya doesn't want to be known as that guy, but he will take it. Monoma decides to be on top, Midoriya giving him his headband, and the others being on the bottom. Deku learns about Shinso's quirk and decides to put him in front, with Hatsune and him being on the back. Monoma copies Shinso's quirk, and together with his pissing off, it's an extremely deadly combo. Monoma also notices he can't copy Deku's quirk and keeps it in mind. Deku also borrowed some of Hatsume's babies. Deku's group instantly goes after the weaker groups, and succeeds with Monoma's taunting. Despite this, Bakugo still steals the 1,000,000-point headband. But they still have enough points from the weaker teams, as they easily took down some of the Class 1 heirs, even taking Bakugo's original headband. Allowing them to move on to the battle course only with a couple differences, mainly Uraraka being replaced with Monoma. Leading to the final event, the 1 vs 1s, with the same matchups as before except again Uraraka replaced by Monoma. The first match Deku easily beats Shinso as he knows his quirk now. Then came the next changed fight, Monoma vs Bakugo. Neither crowd wanted them to win, but despite 3 quirks, Bakugo still wins because he hates Monoma with a passion. When Bakugo is angry he wins most of the time. Deku would encounter Bakugo, congratulating him on his win. Bakugo would ask Deku how he made it this far, and Deku would say hard work and walk away. Deku would also meet Uraraka for real for the first time. They would get along well, with Uraraka recognizing Deku as the kid who tried to save her after he left the room. Deku would encounter Endeavor, with Endeavor calling him weak, using gear and not a quirk. Deku would tell him he doesn't need a quirk to win, and walk away. Deku vs Todoroki would begin. Deku immediately began moving his arms in a circular motion, building up kinetic energy, while Todoroki summons an ice wall. Deku converts the energy into a blast to destroy the ice going directly at, immediately after he grapples onto the ice above the field to gain an aerial advantage. Todoroki attempts to hit the airborne Deku, but his ice can't keep up with the speed the boy possesses in the sky. Deku then sends his grapples on both sides of Todoroki, coming at him at massive speed and power. Todoroki creates a wall in front and behind him negating the attack. Deku immediately starts punching the wall, destroying it, and converts the energy gained from the punches into a close-range blast. Todoroki tanks the attack with his fire resistance. Then Deku asks the question, "What's with the fire, or rather lack thereof?" Deku then asks, "Aren't you the son of Endeavor?" Todoroki shouts that he refuses to use his left side. Deku says, "Well, you're going to have to use it soon," as Deku grapples back in for another close-range attack, barraging Todoroki with punches. Todoroki attempts to use an ice barrier, but Deku immediately punches through each one. Deku tells him to use his full power, or else you will lose. Todoroki tells Deku that he refuses, but he realizes he won't be able to win at this rate. Deku kicks him with his spring boots, blasting him back. Todoroki realizes he is at his limit, with Deku walking up to him saying, "I'm no longer just asking, Todoroki, I want you to use your full power. I don't care why or why not, now let's fight for real." Todoroki, inspired by these words, activates his fire side. Deku attempts to go in for a close-range attack, but Todoroki's fire begins to melt the metal protecting Midoriya's fingers. Deku jumps away and takes off his gauntlets, saying they won't be useful anymore. Deku then springs to Todoroki again for one last punch. Todoroki also does a fire-based punch, causing an explosion like smoke. When the smoke clears, we see a conscious Deku, with a partly burnt hand, and an unconscious Todoroki with a broken hand, an outcome no one expected. Deku lifts Todoroki onto his back, carrying him to the ref, calling Deku the winner. The crowd is of course surprised, with the kid who hasn't even used a quirk yet, to win. Deku and Todoroki both get healed by Recovery Girl, with him being confused on how Deku wasn't that badly injured, especially burn-wise. Deku is also surprised with the lack of damage taken, thinking it could be because his father had a fire quirk, and he inherited the resistance to fire. Deku then learns he won't be able to use his gauntlets for his match against Ida. Deku immediately jumps high into the air, to avoid Ida's speed. With Ida doing the same, Deku catches his leg midair, but he also flies out of bounds. Deku attempts to grapple onto Ida, but his old gear won't be able to reach Ida and he would fail, losing in the semi-finals. Bakugo vs Ida would be the last match. Unfortunately, Bakugo's ability would easily counter Ida being out of Ida's range, making Bakugo the winner like the original timeline. Ida would be out of it during the fight due to his brother being killed. From there the ceremony would happen with Izuku being 4th overall, with Kirishima as 3rd, Ida as 2nd, and Bakugo as 1st. Deku would then talk to Aizawa about transferring to the hero course, and he would learn he would need to wait until after the hero internships before joining classes, and that he would be joining class 1A because they only have 19 kids, as the kid who replaced Deku in the OG timeline got expelled on the first day. As such, during this time he would begin with the selling of his gear, as many companies saw his grapples and spring boots and wanted to buy them, and during that time he also got a couple lessons as he needed them before transferring in. He is also confronted by Aizawa about him being the vigilante Deku. Of course Midoriya attempts to deny it, but when Aizawa lays all the information in front of Deku, he folds, saying he was the vigilante. Aizawa tells him no more of that or else he would be expelled, and tells him he needs to make a hero costume, a new one. So with that Deku does, deciding to go more for a greenish-gray color scheme, adding new parts to his costume, like a jet pack being inspired by Hatsune, which could also covert power into his gauntlets, a new pair of goggles which were much more similar to Aizawa's than his previous ones. He also added a belt where he could keep a bunch of minor tools and doohickeys, and finally a mask. That allows him to distort his voice and be used for purified air. Deku would also add a scarf inspired by Aizawa. With that he would walk into class after the events of the hero killer, being introduced as the new student for class 1A. Deku would notice 2 empty seats and ask who's missing, being told it was Ida as he was badly injured by the villain Stain, and will be out of class for a couple weeks, as Deku wasn't there to save him. Bakugo would shout before Deku would sit down, "How did you even get here, you quirkless bastard?" Everyone would immediately look at him shocked. Deku would say, "I don't really know, hard work, smarts, and maybe luck." Everyone would be welcoming after the questioning phase of "Do you really not have a quirk?" among other aspects of how he did things. Deku would prove his skill during the race competition. Deku with his gear would make it there first at breakneck speeds, surprising the entire class. Deku was better at grappling than even Zero. Deku would be more accustomed as he didn't just learn how to grapple as he learned it a while ago, unlike original Deku who just learned 5%. All might want to talk to Deku after class to apologize to him as he recognized Deku as the kid he told couldn't be a hero. All the boys would be shocked by the quirkless boy and immediately befriend him. Then Deku would meet All Might where he would apologize to Deku, and tell Deku about OFA, where he would ask Deku if he would want the quirk, but Deku would refuse, saying others need it more than him. And accept the apology and leave. Deku learns about final exams. For the sake of fairness, Aizawa decided to give Deku both the exam of his normal class, and his robotics class, saying he will take the higher score as his normal exam score. Midoriya would actually score better on the hero exam, shocking Aizawa. When asked how, he would say morals are what's being a part of a hero or a vigilante in his case. Aizawa then recognizes he doesn't have a hero name, and says he will have to make one before the exam. Deku thinks of it while studying, a process made easier by him being smarter than the original timeline. Deku then learns about him battling the heroes, and with that Deku battles with Bakugo against All Might. Power Loader wanted to battle Deku, but All Might wanted to truly see the quirkless kid in action. While watching, Deku would get to know Uraraka better, becoming friends. I also forgot to mention Ida returned. Let's just skip to Deku's match as everything else is the same. Deku would want to figure out strategies for defeating All Might, but he wouldn't actually figure out a way to fight him, but instead running away would be better. Bakugo and Deku would be impacted by a huge blast of air, with Deku staying on the ground with grapples. Bakugo would try to fight All Might head-on, but immediately fail. Deku tries to flee, but bumps into Bakugo. Deku realizes there is no convincing Bakugo, and decides to help with the effort. Telling Bakugo to give him some time, with Deku beginning to grapple around, Bakugo would attempt to put up an effort, long enough for Deku to charge an arm blast, and attack All Might from the back of his head. Knocking All Might down, All Might would immediately try to knock down Deku, but Deku would grapple away before he can get hit. Grabbing Bakugo on the way. Telling Bakugo he needs to listen, just this once, there is a reason to make it into the hero course, and that we need to make a surprise attack. Using another arm blast to knock All Might far away and begin to flee again, Deku is able to use massive speed using his jetpack to have more speed. Deku makes it to the gateway faster, but it's not enough. All Might begin to break Deku's gear along with Bakugo's, with all of gear crumbling with the exception of Deku's right grapple hand. Bakugo would blast All Might away, and Midoriya the opposite way, using the kinetic energy from being hit by All Might. Deku tries to blast himself forward, only making a couple of meters. However, he sees Kaken get downed. Deku then decides he has to show he is a hero not just to Bakugo but to 1A, and Deku jumps into the battle, grappling Bakugo, flinging him behind himself to the gate, with Bakugo going through the gate, allowing him to escape, allowing them both to pass. Then the gang will go shopping together, and most kids abandon Midoriya immediately, with Uraraka deciding to stay with Midoriya, not getting too nervous as Uraraka isn't that in love with Deku at this point. Deku wouldn't actually need much as he can construct his own gear, despite that Uraraka would run away to do her own thing, leaving Midoriya alone when Shigaraki meets him. Shigaraki would call Midoriya, "Hello Deku. I figured out who you are, after all you made it so obvious, with your grappling, in particular. What surprises me the most is that you're quirkless, you can do so much yet you are at such a disadvantage, exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. I mean you don't have much of a choice without your gear. You're useless, like your hero name, Deku. Let's sit down. They would then sit down on the fountain, talking about how much of an idiot Stain was, and asking what the difference between the two of them is. Deku says the difference between us is everything, morals, abilities, sides, but most of all he isn't a coward. Shigaraki then talks about how Midoriya is just like All Might and how he wants to crush them both. Araka then jumps in, with Shigaraki deciding to back away saying on the way out, "Wow Izuku or rather Deku, we will meet again." Through this Araka learns about Deku's hidden identity, and Midoriya gives all the info he can about the incident, even revealing his identity to the police, as he didn't want to lie. Leading to his hidden identity being revealed to the world, where Deku decides to keep his original hero name, as the secret is up. If you like this what if, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. Comment what if you want to see next in the comments below.